Good morning. Hello, everybody. And yeah, welcome to another week in space. The hits just keep on coming. Um, yeah, I'll just give folks a moment to come on in and settle down. Hello out there. Good morning. Yeah, just what we like to do on Monday mornings. Good morning, Jeff. Is sit on down, have some tea or whatever beverage you like to have, and talk about what we might expect from space this week. There's kind of a lot going on. We've got Venus making their Cazimi, so that is conjunction with the sun, resetting the synodic cycle with the sun. We have a new moon in Gemini coming up later on in the week. Um, yeah, we've got some Mercury action, shift in signs coming into conjunct Jupiter in the early degrees of Gemini, and also coming into form a trine to Pluto. So there's a lot of moving pieces this week. So we're going to try and break it all down in a timely fashion and get you all the information that you need to navigate the week with some elegance and some style. So yeah, just allowing people to arrive a little bit. Um, and as people are settling in, I see Cosmic Cousins is on the Instagram, and Jeff asked me a couple weeks back what I was thinking about with Neptune at the last degrees, or the 29th degree of Pisces, which Neptune's going to be kind of like holding it down there for a while. And just to like think about that like 29th degree as like kind of the accumulation of an entire sign. And Neptune has been moving through Pisces for quite some time. I believe it's like 14 years. And so this is sort of like, you know, all of the like Piscean energy kind of distilled into this last degree. And as a planet is kind of transiting that last degree, I think it's really considering, what have I learned here? What have I experienced? What am I taking forward with me? And also the kind of anxiety of looking over the edge and being like, ooh, like that other sign looks real weird. Like, I don't know about that, right? So there's, I think, the kind of learning the lessons of really like distilling the lessons from a sign in that 29th degree, and also some ambivalence or anxiety about going over into the next sign. And one of the things that I've been thinking about with Neptune at this last degree of Pisces is, I think Neptune's transit through Pisces has really brought things like astrology, magic, the tarot into the collective in a huge way over the past 14, 15 years or so. And I attribute Neptune's transit through Pisces to the sort of widespread acceptance of magic. And I was talking to somebody the other day who's taking a like a spiritual counseling class, or like a chaplaincy course, and he was saying that the sort of fastest growing religion among young people is Wicca and earth-based, like kind of earth-based religions. And I think that this is a result of Neptune's transit through Pisces and getting us in touch with the divinity that's all around us, right? And so, I've sort of been chewing on that question that Cosmic Cousins asked for a week or two, and just thinking about the way that magic has come into the collective, and I attribute that to Neptune's transit through Pisces over the past, I don't know, 14, 15 years or so. And, you know, how do we take that with us, right? How do we take this sort of magical awareness, the magical understanding, the appreciation of astrology, the appreciation of, you know, magical practices, the appreciation of unmediated connection with a divinity of our own choosing, into, you know, the next sign when Neptune moves into Aries. Yeah, and Jeff, Cosmic Cousins, is saying when Neptune first entered into Pisces, I started studying astrology. Yeah, and I think that I sort of same thing. I started studying the tarot, and I was like, oh my God, there's like there's something here. This is the piece that I've been missing, you know. And I think that it's really brought you know, this conversation into the collective in a really amazing way that I really appreciate. And so, how do we take this with us as Neptune changes sign, which isn't going to happen for a year or so? But, you know, outer planet transits like Pluto moving into Aquarius or Neptune moving into Aries, like this creates a big shift in the collective, which doesn't necessarily happen immediately. We get like little hints of it, like when Pluto moved into Aquarius, everything was AI. AI was all the rage, right? And now we're sort of seeing some of the, I mean, I think immediately we saw some of the downsides of that, but they're becoming almost comical at this point with like, you know, Google releasing an AI bot that tells people to put glue in their pizza cheese and to eat rocks. And like, what did you expect when you're training something on a bunch of Reddit shit posts, right? Like, you know, how did you not see that coming? Anyway, I just wanted to toss that out there because I was sort of chewing on that for a minute. So let's get to this week in space. Space. Thank you all for tuning in. I just want to say it's great to see everybody out there. And oh, good morning, Vancouver Island. And what's up, Liverpool? Hello, everybody out there. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And just so folks know, I'm an advisor on the excellent AstroStar app. You can check out AstroStar Live. It's a great app that is links you to an astrological community of a bunch of folks like myself who are doing, you know, astrological work on a regular basis, bringing, you know, talks, classes, discussions, posting things, doing readings, stuff like that. And I do this talk as, you know, through the AstroStar Live app, and then I like to put it on Instagram once in a while. I like to put it on the YouTube just to get the message out there and help people navigate space. I also am an advisor on AstroStar Live, so I do readings through them and do some other talks once in a while on subjects like full moons or the astrology of fashion or whatever kind of catches my fancy. So I just wanted to put that out there in case anyone wanted to get deeper into a pretty vibrant astrological community. You can check out the AstroStar Live app. Now let's get into this week in space. Okay, so I want to start off yesterday, Sunday, June the 2nd, kind of bleeding into today because we experienced a pretty supportive trine between Jupiter and Gemini and Pluto, who is retrograding their way back, moonwalking their way back through the early degrees of Aquarius. This transit occurred late at night, early in the morning, depending on where you're at 1 degrees and 53 arc minutes of these air signs. And we sort of ended last week talking about this, but you know, I think this kind of like kicks off the week, and it's pretty important because we have Jupiter trining Pluto, and then Mercury will come in later in the week, enter into Gemini, conjunct Jupiter and also trine Pluto, kind of helping bring some of the information that's coming up into a more maybe like cognitive awareness and potentially giving us the ability to communicate some of the understandings that emerge from this. And one of the ways that I see this relationship, first off, a trine is a supportive aspect, right? It is planets that are in the same element in a harmonious 120-degree angle to each other, so they can see each other and they're vibing. They're like, oh, air? Yeah, air, right? And so Pluto is a planet of death, rebirth, and transformation, dealing with the underworld, dealing with the unconscious, dealing with the collective unconscious, dealing with kind of survival drives. In a Freudian drive theory, this also might be considered the id, right? Pluto is the planet, sorry, Jupiter is the planet of higher learning, wisdom, expansion, faith, hope, right? So you put them in a kind of harmonious relationship, and Pluto might be transforming our philosophy, right? Jupiter has the bigger picture, right? Their view from Olympus, they're like, I can see everything. This is how everything fits together in a coherent whole. And Pluto, Jupiter's brother, right, living in the underworld, is like, we're kind of like transforming this, like new information is emerging from the depths, right, which is maybe transforming kind of our philosophy of this is how things work, right, because maybe things work on the surface, but like underneath, something new is churning that is causing us to adjust our philosophy, expand our philosophy. Also, this can bring up expansions in our awareness of power. Pluto is a planet that is related to power, right? Power struggles, power structures, right? How we hold power. And Jupiter again is a optimistic guy, right? So this can bring maybe a positive relationship with power. This is always interesting to me because for a lot of my life I was like power bad. Right. People with power, right, have power over and like that looks gross and I don't like that. That doesn't feel right to me. And so power is bad. I had the same thing with money. I was like, people with money, like they are up here, I am down here, right? There's a power imbalance. I don't like that. Like I just witnessed, misuses of power or like, things that I resented. And so I made a broad sweeping judgment, right? Jupiterian big picture, like all this bad, don't want it, right? And this rejection of power and money didn't hurt any of the people who, I resented. In fact, it probably gave them more power. Right. Also didn't help me, right? Rejecting my own personal power and rejecting, being able to have resources that supported me, like didn't really get me very far. And also like helped to like churn that resentment, right? And like kind of like sharpen the knife of resentment. And so, I bring this in because Jupiter allows us to kind of expand our capacity to hold power, right? As we come in contact with the undercurrent, the Plutonian undercurrent, right? That lives in that unconscious realm, that lives in the depths. And as like Jupiter creates that expansion for that to emerge, and we can kind of integrate these through the trine aspect, they can come into a harmonious relationship. We can start thinking about, okay, what is it like for me to hold power in a healthy way, in a skillful way, right? And what is it like for me to have power with, right, in a horizontal structure instead of power over? And I think a lot of our representations of power are in a dominant culture, which holds power over, right? And so, what happens if we are able to think about holding power with, as in a cooperative culture, all right? And how do we cooperate and share power, right? How can me holding power in my body, right? How can I share that with other people to empower them instead of consolidating power out of fear that somebody might take it? And this is sort of the intergenerational trauma of the Olympian gods, right? That starts off with Saturn castrating Uranus, right? And Uranus being like, your son's going to do this to you. And then Saturn being like, oh, hell no, and eating his children so they don't do this to him. And then Jupiter overthrowing Saturn and Jupiter always being on edge of like, who's going to try and take my power, right? And so, how do we like break that cycle of this? Like, if I have power, somebody's going to try and take that from me. So I need to consolidate it into like being able to share power horizontally. And I think that this is something that Pluto, who is Jupiter's brother, by the by, Pluto in Aquarius is really working towards because Aquarius is this horizontal power structure. Right. Aquarius is about the collective and the power of the collective and our ability as people, right, to share power with each other instead of outsourcing it to, one leader who is up there on Olympus, who is able to like swoop down and take what he wants, or like throw a lightning bolt at people that he doesn't like. As we recognize our individual power and the ways in which we can share that with each other, right? I think it begins to shift power structures in the collective. And I think that Jupiter trining Pluto can, again, transform our kind of philosophy around power, around wealth, around what we can hold as individuals and how we can share that in the collective. And, one of the ways that I like to think about this in the kind of Aquarian system is as like particles and waves in a quantum physics type of model, where, as an individual, I am a particle, right? But also, if we kind of like shift our view, go from camera one to camera two, right? I am also part of like I'm also a wave, right? Part of the collective of, energy moving through the world, as like, whether this is human energy or just electrons and protons spinning in, their cycles, right? And so as we shift between, particle, right? I am an individual who holds power in my body, to wave, I am part of a collective that also has power, right? What does that look like? And how do we, in a true Gemini spirit, how do we hold both? How do we hold both our particle and wave nature simultaneously? Because that's how it works, right? We are both particles and waves. And while the kind of human mind in some ways is like, no, it's got to be this or that, Gemini and Jupiter into Gemini, right? Expanding this ability to hold both things, right? And to hold these opposites. And so hold on to that, because that's going to come back around later in this talk as we move closer and closer towards this new moon in Gemini. So today, Monday, June the 3rd, Mercury enters into Gemini. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, so they are feeling pretty good over here. Mercury is going to be in Gemini until June 17th, so they're kind of moving quickly, about 2 weeks in this sign, so get it while it's good, And for those of you who are interested in doing some mercurial magic, I think that this might be a good time. So Mercury, right? Like, I like to think of rulership as like a planet coming home, right? So Mercury comes home to their like, information superstation in Gemini. And I just imagine this like screens, right? Phones, books, magazines, right? Tickers with like information just moving through. This is like the superstation of the Matrix. you know and Mercury in Gemini, right? Information, communication. This is like text fire. Like Mercury walks in and they're like, turns everything on and just starts texting everybody, right? And telling everybody like what they heard, what they thought, what they saw. And I think, social media is such a kind of Gemini and mercurial thing, right? The ability to just fire off text messages, right? Or like Twitter, right? Just like, oh, I had a thought, blam, blam, blam. Like now everyone can read it. Like every thought is sort of amplified, right? Um, and so also if we think about Gemini, kind of like reining it in a little bit, Gemini is these two poles, these two twins. We have Castor and Pollux, we have the divine twin, we have the earthly twin, and Mercury is sort of moving between these, right? Mercury is this constantly toggling between these two poles. And like also the ability to sort of hold both of these, right? And again, create this secret third thing, you know and they travel between the underworld and the upper world, between our cognitive function and our unconscious or somatic awareness, right? And so I think as Mercury enters back into their sign of Gemini, there's a greater ability to communicate between the this and the that, right? And a greater ability to sort of stand at the threshold and allow what else can emerge. Mercury, rules over thresholds and crossroads, rules over choices and decisions, rules over these sort of in-between places, rules over the liminal spaces, right? So it stands at the crossroads. It's like there's that way and there's this way and there's this right here in between, right? That is considering or like asking questions or telling jokes. Right. They're also the trickster, right? And they help to create shifts in consciousness and cognition and awareness through trickery and poetry and Freudian slips and slips of the tongue and the silver tongue, right? Their ability to spin language and words, right? Also, another piece that, as I was sort of like thinking about the relationships of Mercury and Gemini, right? I was also thinking about their non-binary, right? They are in the, I think it's the Orphic hymn. They are like benefic with the benefic planets, malefic with the malefic planets. They are masculine with the masculine planets. They are feminine with the feminine planets. Depending on who they are, they're able to sort of like shift, right? And they hold both genders. They're non-binary, right? And they move between the poles of gender, right? They are, the secret third thing. They are kind of like this non-binary fluid energy. And Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, like maybe it is no coincidence that Pride Month, right, starts during Gemini season, and Mercury is also associated with multicolor, right? Their color is multicolor, anything that is multicolor, and the Pride flag is a rainbow. Coincidence? I think not. Right. And, also I think Mercury, who is able to sort of walk between the raindrops and sort of shift forms, right? They are able to appear in whatever form is necessary to sort of deliver their message and to move through life. I think that there's also this component of queer people needing to like shift, right, and code switch to be able to fit in, right, in different situations and to be able to hold their true identity while also existing in a world that may not accept that. Right. And I think that is an incredibly mercurial quality, right? To be able to shift dimensions, to shift appearances, right? To fit in with different systems, to fit in with different cultures, to fit in with different people and groups, right? And so Mercury is able to sort of move and navigate through all of these. And in their home sign of Gemini, they are kind of delivering the message between these two poles and also receiving the message between the two poles, right? Between the upper world and the lower world, between the divine twin and the human twin, between the masculine and the feminine, right? Between this and that, right? And then all the time they're like, this is what I think about this, blah, 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 text fire. So anyway, today we get to welcome Mercury into their home sign of Gemini. So welcome Mercury, welcome Hermes. Moving right along on Tuesday, June the 4th, as soon as Mercury enters into Gemini, they trine Pluto in Aquarius at 1 degree and 52 minutes. Right. So Mercury is, information, right? How we process information. It's how we communicate things. It is, how we think about things, how we like talk about stuff. And Pluto is the underworld, right? So the unconscious dimensions. And so we can have like, in this trine, which again is a harmonious aspect, we can have information coming from the underworld, right, that then moves up into our cognitive function. And it's like, oh snap, right? Like that thing. It helps us to process that unconscious information. And it helps us to like integrate that information into our ways of thinking, right? Helps us to maybe communicate some of the somatic messages that might be coming up. I really think about, we have like the super conscious or like Olympian consciousness, right? And then we have the kind of terrestrial consciousness of our day world where we're like walking and talking and doing jobs and driving cars. And then we have the kind of unconscious of the underworld, which I see as like kind of the somatic, right? The signals and information that's happening in the body that maybe doesn't have a conscious structure, right? That doesn't have words. It's just sensations or feelings. And, with Mercury trining Pluto, it may be a good time for that kind of somatic information to come up in a way that's like, oh, this is what that feeling is, or oh, this is that thought, right? This also can be secrets being revealed, right? Hidden information, information that lives in the underworld, information that lives in secret, right? Coming up and being revealed and coming to that mercurial awareness. And so this can be like family secrets, right? Things in our communities that kind of emerge, stuff about ourselves that comes into consciousness. This also might play out in the news, right? Where hidden information comes to light. This could be like information, like, secrets being leaked, reporting on things that have been hidden, you know, and Mercury, as the psychopomp, travels into the underworld and establishes communication with Pluto. And they have a special friendship. They share an invisibility helmet, right? So, and Mercury is the only one who can travel between the underworld and the upper world, right? So there is like an established relationship and a flow of information that can occur between the unconscious and the consciousness, right? Um, and another thing that's interesting about this is Pluto, right? Underworld is also like crime underworld, gangsters, organized crime, criminal underworld. And Mercury is the patron saint of thieves and criminals. So there's also like a harmonious relationship between, the criminal underbelly or, a hidden criminal element and Mercury, who is, helps out thieves. So I don't know. If you're into crime, this is a good transit for you, I guess. Um, what else did I want to say about this? Oh yeah, this is also coming off a transit that occurred last Thursday where Mercury was conjunct Uranus. And when that occurred, right, which Mercury and Uranus can be shocking information. We talked about this last week, but the day that occurred, we had the Trump verdict came down, right, which is kind of, I mean, I kind of saw that coming, but like that's shocking information that US president was convicted of 34 felonies, right? Which, I think kind of like threw everybody in the media ecosystem for a loop. Right. And also another thing that was happening around that time was the All Eyes on Rafa, which is a AI meme, came out right around that time, and that was in response to the bombing of a refugee camp in Rafa, which killed 45 civilians last week. And then shortly after that, this meme dropped, which if you haven't seen it, it's an AI generated image of uh, landscape with what could be tents spelling out in white, all eyes on Rafa. And this was shared like millions and millions and millions of times on Instagram and other social media platforms. And I find this like pretty interesting because the image doesn't actually say anything, right? I think that Mercury, who is into information and the spread of information, right? And Mercury, Gemini, right? Don't really care what the information is. They're just like, shoot it off, right? Here, like, let's toss this out there and see what happens, right? And the image doesn't really say anything about like the actual experience of Palestinians in Rafah in a war zone, right? It doesn't show any graphic images. It doesn't like really like bring any information. It's just an AI generated statement, which was shared millions and millions of times, maybe because it was safe, right? And maybe because it slipped through the Instagram censorship, right? Which is heavily censoring war images from Gaza for, whatever reasons. And so, I just think that this is really interesting because we have, examples of powerful imagery, right, that have shifted the kind of public perception of war. In Vietnam, images of caskets coming home of killed U.S. Soldiers really shifted the perspective of the war in Vietnam. Nick Ut's photo Napalm Girl in Vietnam was an image that was very graphic and really changed the public perception and the world perception of that war. And with the AI generated image that says all eyes on Rafa, it has none of that, right? It's just a statement that doesn't really have any of the visceral kind of plutonic energy to it, right? What it does have is the technology, Uranus, right, of AI, right, and then Mercury, information. Right. And so that was like Mercury and Uranus coming together. And this is technology and information that isn't necessarily saying anything, but it has the ability for like mass dissemination. Um, and so as Mercury, and I'm bringing all this in, is as Mercury comes into trine Pluto, right, which brings more depth and more edginess and more of the kind of like id energy, more kind of like shadowy information, more kind of difficult information. um, I'm curious to see, what gets spread on the internet and how conflict, how war, how the kind of atrocities in Gaza are going to be talked about in the media. And then as Mercury conjuncts Jupiter on the next day, this also helps to shift kind of the bigger picture understanding and communicate a new philosophy or new understandings, right? And so as Mercury trines Pluto, this is the ability for uncomfortable information to come to light. Right. And again, it may like this uncomfortable information might expand our awareness and the narrative that we are telling ourselves or telling each other, or the collective narrative that is being spun to the world. Right. And now that Mercury has moved into their own sign, they have even more power to communicate. So we can keep our ear open to the great below and see what emerges in ourselves and also in the collective. But, right, it's important to remember that Mercury is a trickster, right? So where I'm like, it should be this way, Mercury is like, I'm gonna do it any way I want. And I think the other important piece is that in this trickster capacity that Mercury holds is like they are able to tell a joke. They are able to make light of. They are able to make it funny, right? And I think that this is incredibly important, especially when we are dealing with plutonic energy, which might be like pretty messed up, right? It might be uncomfortable. It might be hard to hold. It might be dysregulating, and Mercury can laugh it off, right? Um, years ago, after 9/11, Slavoj Žižek put out this book, like a little book, sort of talking about 9/11 and kind of the response. And one of the things that I don't think I have it anymore, but one of the things that he talked about was uh, this sort of anarchist collective in Sarajevo during the conflict there. And what like one of the things that they did was make like political jokes and like pretty gnarly political jokes. But he was like, this was really important because like when this was happening in the Bosnian conflict, when this was happening, it was really important to have levity, to have humor, to be able to process what was unfathomable. Unfathomable. I think I said that right. The weight or the pressure or the horror of the situation, and being able to make light of that was a way of dealing with it and a way of processing it. And, I don't think it's this is a delicate place to be, and Mercury treads in delicate places, right? Because we don't want to, minimize people's challenging experiences, and we don't want to minimize things that we don't understand. And also, like when we are holding something that is too much, too heavy, too kind of dark, right? To be able to laugh about it, to make light of it, right? Literally make light of it, is a way that we are able to process it. And I think that Mercury has that ability as the tricksters, especially as they are like going into the underworld. They're able to like joke with Cerberus and Charon and Persephone, right? And in these dark and like challenging situations, they are able to crack a joke and to lighten the mood. And this shouldn't be at like other people's expenses, but I think that this is sort of the gift of memes, right? And this is why like maybe memes are so palatable, is it takes what is kind of unfathomable and stuff that is challenging to process, and the kind of great injustices of the world, and is able to make light of them in a way that we can digest them. Right. And again, I don't know if this does anything, right? And maybe it's not about doing anything. Maybe it's about just being able to like sit with it and being able to laugh about things that are really hard to handle. So I just wanted to bring that in and just plug memes because that's another one of my favorite things. That's the thing that gets me through, right? It's all about the lulls, my friends. Okay. Also on Tuesday, June the 4th, Mercury conjuncts Jupiter right after this trine to Pluto, right after we're sort of like dredging up this uncomfortable information into consciousness. Now Mercury comes into conjunct Pluto. And so Mercury, who is the ruler of Gemini, the dispositor of this sign, coming in to say, "What's up, Jupiter? Welcome to my information dome. Make yourself comfortable. Here's the Wi-Fi password." And Jupiter is uncomfortable in Gemini. They are in their detriment because Jupiter wants like one coherent narrative, and Mercury's got like 30 TVs on playing different news stations and Saturday Night Live, right? And Jupiter's sort of like, I can't think with all of this noise, but there's no way to turn it off because this is Jupiter's reality for the next year. So Jupiter needs to figure out ways of either like going with the flow or weaving all of these threads together into something that is concrete, that makes sense to them, that can be this sort of overarching philosophical narrative that can make sense of everything. And I don't actually know if that's possible. And I think that this is one of the things that we're learning, Jupiter is learning in Gemini, is that we need to learn to hold the multiplicity, and that we can have multiple truths happening simultaneously, that we're all living in different reality tunnels, right? Where Jupiter wants to be like, all these reality tunnels meet at this point that is called the truth. Mercury and Gemini is like, nah, bro, like we're all in our own reality tunnels, and that can be okay, you know. And I think that this is helping to expand awareness, right? Helping Jupiter break down this need for a coherent narrative and the ability to be with what is, right? And this helps us to expand the story that we're telling. Right. And this also may help Jupiter's capacity to integrate all the information that it's picking up in Gemini. And I think one of the things also that happens is Mercury's like Jupiter trining Pluto, right? And we get this sort of like underworld information emerging, right? And being like, whoa, okay. And then Mercury coming in to trine Pluto, and it's like, okay, this is sort of what this is meaning, right? I'm starting to see a picture. And then Mercury conjuncts Jupiter and like puts it all together. And it's like, okay, here it is, right? And Mercury's making that journey from Olympus down to Hades and back up to Olympus and delivering the message. So I think that, Tuesday, Wednesday, we might have like some clarity about some of the stuff that has been bubbling or emerging, or some of the nameless feelings that we've been experiencing, or some of the challenging stuff that we have been holding. I think by midweek, we're like, okay, this is how I can kind of put it together, right? This is sort of what this means, because Jupiter is really seeking to make meaning and to tell a story, right? Mercury is being like, this is what I see, this is what I understand, this is what it could be. And then we're putting it together into, okay, this is how to move forward with this. This is like how this integrates into the bigger picture. And I think something to understand or to stick with um, is that Mercury is like we can think about Mercury as the student and Jupiter as the teacher, you know, in sorry, Jupiter is like the guru, right? And this is a teacher-student relationship, except for this is at the student's home, right? Or at the student's you know, information dome, right? At the arcade, right? Like the teacher coming to meet the student at the arcade, and the student's like, "You're in my house now," right? You know, and just thinking about dangerous minds, right? Um, you know, and the sort of relationship between teacher and student and that hierarchy being changed, right? And the teacher, it's important for the teacher to learn from the student. And it's important for the student to step into their role of the teacher and to communicate what they know. And instead of it always being, top down, right, teacher to student, this is like student maybe showing what they know or showing their world to the teacher to be able to expand that awareness, right? Because it's really important, not to know everything because Jupiter can kind of be a know-it-all, right? King of the gods, like, I'm up here shooting lightning bolts at you, right? I like you can't question me. And then that sort of power structure gets inverted a little bit, right? And Jupiter is forced to kind of admit that they don't know everything, right? And that they have stuff to learn and that Mercury can teach them things, right? And I think again, like bringing that kind of levity and the trickery, right, to sort of break down Jupiter's consolidation of power and Jupiter's, know-it-all nature, right? This is the truth, right? And Mercury's like, but why? It's like, because it's the truth. And it's like, but why? Right? And so beginning to erode our idea of like, this is what truth is, or this is the only way it can be, and being able to expand that awareness, right? Um, yeah, and yeah, I think, and yeah, I guess I'll just like wrap it up or wrap up this section on, remembering Mercury as the kind of threshold god, right? Who also moves between the poles of the underworld and Olympus, and um that they open doors, right? And they like are a key master. They open the doors and they sort of help us to choose. And if we know everything, then it's hard for new information to come in, and it's hard for us to make different choices or have the possibility of different outcomes. But I think one of the things that we're getting with Mercury in relation to Jupiter is the ability to sort of expand what's possible and expand our ability to make empowered choices and to expand our options, right? Because Jupiter might be like, it's only this way, and Mercury's like, no, it could be anything, right? And so I think it feels really nice for Jupiter to be like, oh yeah, it can be anything, and to really have that like deeper awareness that Pluto brings to the party to be able to make empowered choices about what is the right step forward. Okay, so also on Tuesday, tomorrow is a big day, we have Venus conjunct the Sun at 14 degrees and 30 minutes. This is the synodic reset of Venus as they move from morning star, where they're a little bit more ornery, angry, have a little bit more of a warrior nature, into a evening star, where they're a little bit more chilled out and into their like nice things and pleasure, which I think helps hopefully to cool out some of the vibe of the collective. Um, so the last time Venus conjoined the Sun was during their retrograde in Leo, and this was back on August 13th of 2023, so last year, and that was at 20 degrees of Leo, right? And so this is the kind of reset from that phase, right? As that was their retrograde conjunction, the inferior conjunction. This is the superior conjunction as they are speeding past the Sun, and they will be rising as a evening star. Um, I've been doing a bunch of research about the myth of Cupid and Psyche, which is from Lucius Apuleius, which was written in the second century Common Era, I believe. So a little bit later, and which is the story of Psyche, who is a human female, who was said to be more beautiful than Venus, and people started worshiping her. And Venus Aphrodite was like, "Oh hell no," and basically made her life a living hell. And her son Eros, Cupid, falls in love with Psyche, and in order for them to be together, they both have to go through these sort of different trials and tribulations and these deep initiations, to be able to sort of perfect their ability to connect with each other and couple, right? And so we have the sort of relationship between Psyche, which is the soul, right, and Eros, which is desire or love, right? And the kind of initiation that these two kind of aspects have to go through for their union. Um, and I haven't done enough research to speak intelligently on the entire story, and I don't have enough time to do that either. So I think I'm going to make a Patreon post where I really break it down. But what I wanted to bring in is that Venus's conjunction with the sun is an initiation, as Venus is entering into the heart of the sun. They are sort of burning away kind of old ideas, old values, right? Old kind of relational values, old ideas around what desire or love can be or should be, right? Which were initiated in Leo, and now that it's in Gemini, right? And Leo is very much about like, this, look at me, right? Me. And Gemini is like us, right? Communication, speaking and listening, right? And Gemini is much more of a relational sign. So this is like, Venus's idea of love and value, connection and relationship and aesthetics, that was initiated in Leo during a retrograde and during their move into a morning star, which is much more combative, is now being released, and Venus is being reborn in the sign of Gemini, which is an air sign, which is much more about the intellect and communication, and the exchange of information. Also, Also, bodily fluids are information. They contain a lot of DNA, so that's something to think about. Also, as Venus is initiated in Gemini, right? And we're thinking about the exchange of information. Right. So like Venus is being reborn in this sign and the values are shifting, right? And the initiation that Venus needs to go through, to be able to align with those values and align with the aesthetic of Gemini, align with the relational values and the sort of resources of Gemini is different, right? And so this is happening Tuesday, and this is like a rebirthing of Venus and also an initiation, right? Going into the like center of the sun, into the throne room of the sun, and like burning off everything that was that they have been holding, so that something new can emerge, something right, which is able to hold not just like this is what I love, but self and other. And Gemini is very much about the subject and object relationship, right? And how we are able to hold both of these and hold my needs and needs of another person, or the needs of a multiplicity, instead of just like what I want, right? And so that's something to think about. And I think if you're a member of my Patreon, I think I'm going to try and do a more in-depth talk about that in my Coffee with Jonah section of the Patreon, which has been laying dormant for a long time, and I've been wanting to revive it. And I think this might be a good opportunity, a new initiation, right? A new initiation for Venus or Psyche, right? Okay, so moving on to Thursday, June the 6th, we have a new moon in Gemini, which is occurring at 16 degrees and 18 minutes of this mutable air sign. So this new moon is conjunct Venus, right? Because this is happening just a couple days after the Venus Cazimi. It's also going to be squaring Saturn. right? So we have a pretty stacked array in Gemini during this new moon. Let me just pull this up on my chart so I can see. Yeah, so we have Jupiter, Mercury, the moon, the sun, and Venus all in Gemini, all in the first and second decan of Gemini. So a lot of information there, right? A lot of wind, a lot of air, a lot of stuff to communicate. And then the sun and moon and Venus are all going to be squaring Saturn, and so a new moon is a great time for setting intention, right? And to think about what is the intention that we want to set in Gemini in this mutable air sign, right? What are the intentions around information, around communication that we want to set? I also think, and maybe we'll kind of wrap this up because the last two transits of the week are on Saturday, June the 8th. Venus squares Saturn at 19 degrees and 3 arc minutes. Saturn in Pisces, Venus in Gemini, and then on Sunday, the Sun in Gemini will square Saturn in Pisces at 19 degrees and 5 minutes. We also have Mars entering Taurus. I think we'll talk about that next week. But with Venus and the Sun squaring Saturn, right? Saturn is the alchemical metal of lead, right? Saturn is pressure. It is like the lead weight. It is depressing, right? Saturn is curmudgeon. They're a crone. They're lonely. They're isolated. They're like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to do anything. You need to work harder, right? Saturn just like tells everybody that they need to work harder, that they're not doing it good enough. Saturn is like that inner critic that applies that pressure, right? If we think about Gemini, right, the communication, the self and the like inner self, right? This is me, this is my like, consciousness. And then there's that inner critic that's always like, you suck, you forgot to talk about this thing, you didn't do that well enough, you didn't talk, you're running out of time, And so being able to hold both of these and come into communication with that, right? And as that lead pressure of that inner critic, right? Or of our responsibilities kind of press down upon us, it really can activate the Venusian quality, right? The things that we love. Right. What is important? Venus, our values, what we love. In the face of great pressure is when we're like, oh, this is what's really important to me. And I think that also helps to identify the gold of the sun, that authentic self, what is really meaningful. And Saturn is like, you need nothing, right? All you need is like a blanket and some sandals, and you're good, right? Look at what I have. I have nothing, and I'm fine, right? And Venus is like, but I want friends and I want nice things. And the sun is like, I want to like do something with my life. And Saturn's like, no, right? And so it's in that face of that kind of austerity, in the face of that rejection, in the face of that criticism, in the face of that pressure, right? Then we realize this is what's important, right? This is what is authentic. This is what I need to do. This is what is really me. This is what I don't want to live without. And I think Gemini is a very alchemical sign because it talks about the opposites. And this is the sort of, the great work can break down to like we are separating the opposites. And this is also part of the Cupid and Psyche myth, is the separating of the conglomeration of things, the like information overload, and we are separating it out into like what is valuable, right? What is valuable, what is not valuable, or like what is positive, what is negative, right? What is the lunar? What is the solar? What is the masculine? What is the feminine, right? What is the yin? What is the yang? Anything, right? Anything that you want to put in this hand and put in that hand. Gemini is separating out and holding, right? And then the pressure of Saturn is like helping to get these to their core essence, right? The purest form that then, are kind of reunited. And it is that reunion of these separated things, the coagulation of these separated things, the combination of the this and the that, right, that forms the philosopher's stone that creates the alchemical gold of our pure essence, right? And this is the essence of desire, and this is the essence of soul, and this is the union of Cupid and Psyche, right, of our desire and our soul, right? And it is through the like separating and the purifying of these elements that we are able to create the alchemical wedding, right? And we can maybe see this as the sun and the moon conjunct during this new moon under the pressure of the lead weight of Saturn, which we are taking that pressure and we are transforming that into the alchemical gold in our bodies, in our consciousness, and our relationships with others, right? And this helps us to define what we love, what is valuable, what is the like pure essence that I'm taking with me, because it is the philosopher's stone that transforms anything we touch into gold, right? And this is not like money gold, because whatever, right? This is like the pure gold of like, this is meaningful, right? This is like, this is the juice, this is the essence, right? When I'm having an interaction, right? Because I now possess the philosopher's stone because I listened to this talk and I like thought about it on the new moon, right? Because I possess this, the like what I experience, turns into gold, has meaning, right? And I'm also able to project that into the world, right? And transform, whatever I touch into something that is meaningful and has beauty, right? And so, yeah, with that, my friends, I think I will let you go and enjoy your Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll do this talk on Cupid and Psyche. You can check it out on my Patreon. You can find that on Patreon, Camp Wizard Camp. I also got a radio show that I do each and every week. You can find that on SoundCloud, or I'll put a link to it in my stories on Instagram, and also put a link to it on the YouTube. But yeah, each and every week when I have time, I do basically this, but instead of like me just talking the entire time, I find songs that I feel like embody the vibe of the transit. So I'll play a couple songs ranging from country to pop to metal to punk rock. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Wounded Healer was saying my favorite way to listen to music is my radio show. Thank you so much. Right. So yeah, I just play like a very eclectic mix of music and then talk about how it relates to the transits of the week. So that's also my favorite way to listen to music, is thinking of it through an astrological lens. Thank you so much. So you can check that out on SoundCloud. That comes out Fridays for my Patreon, and then I release the hounds to the world, the hounds of love to the world, every Saturday on SoundCloud. And I have a link to it in my stories on Instagram. Every Saturday I'll put another one up after this, and yeah, I'll throw a link in the YouTube. And yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in, and don't forget to check me out on the AstroStar Live app. There's a link in my bio on Instagram, and I'll throw a link in the the YouTube, whatever screen you are. Yeah, AstroStar Live is a great astrology app. There are a bunch of excellent astrologers, including Cameron Allen, Sam Reynolds, Richard Winooski, Tara All, people doing Vedic, people doing traditional, people doing evolutionary, giving talks, making posts, teaching classes, doing readings. Some really accomplished astrologers. A lot of them are like big names. They be doing the talks at NORWAC, people that I look up to, and they're doing some excellent work on AstroStar, and we're building a pretty vibrant astrological community. So yeah, if you want to learn more about astrology, if you're just interested, if you want to be part of that conversation, join us at the AstroStar Live app. And you can book readings with me and other really talented astrologers. And so with that, my friends, that is all the Astro Weather that is fit to print. I hope you all have a great week in space, and I will see you next week. Same wizard time, same wizard channel. And until then, be well, my friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye now. And that